Okay, welcome to High Cheese with Darren Maloney. Today is Monday, April 11th, 2022. And listen, today I just want to go right to the economic calendar and I want to go to business and finance. I usually wait until the end of my episodes to talk about business and finance, but this week is a very important week with the economic calendar. And I just wanted to go over some things that will impact us because I always like the saying, being forewarned is forearmed. I don't know who said it, but forewarned is forearmed. And it does make sense. In the sense of economics, I want everybody to be prepared what could happen so there are no surprises for us. So even if they're bad, at least we're prepared for it. And that's one of the reasons I do this is I like people to understand the world or help people understand the world around them, particularly in finance and in politics too. So let's just go to it. And what I'm going to do right now, I'm going to go over the economic calendar. And here's why it's really important this week. We've got a lot of items on, and what I'm concerned about is that if there is any surprises on what comes out this week, it could really cause a panic at the Fed. Now, the Fed has gotten this thing wrong from day one. And what I mean by getting it wrong, inflation wasn't transitory. For months and months and months, the Fed was pounding this whole concept that inflation is only transitory. So they artificially kept rates low. They continued quantitative easing, and they told us it would not have an effect on inflation. And any spike in inflation was just temporary. Well, they got that wrong. And they don't understand that inflation impacts the middle class American tremendously. What the end result is going to be, it's called a hard landing. And a hard landing for us is going to be essentially stagflation. So let me go over a couple of items on the economic calendar. Today we had the New York Fed median 1-year expected inflation and the 3-year expected inflation. And essentially what that is, the New York Fed takes a survey of consumers and they come to what the consumers expecting inflation to be for a 1-year period and a 3-year period. So the numbers came out at 11 a.m. this morning. It says in March, U.S. consumers expected 6.6% inflation over the next 12 months. Now, the expectation was 6%. So we're well over the 6%. And this is a surprise. And again, this says this is a new high for the series that started in June 2013 and its biggest month-to-month jump. Now, the New York Fed started this survey back in 2013. So this is the biggest month-to-month jump since the inception of this gauge. Now, for a 3-year period, it essentially was left unchanged at 3.7%. But this is not good. Consumers expect to spend 7.7% more over the next 12 months, up from 6.4% in February. So this is not a good sign. And what I want to do is I'm going to just flip over to the market right now because the market has not been reacting too well to this. And what we have here is the Dow Jones is down 0.7%. It's 1:30 in the afternoon, and there's still a few hours before closing, but the Dow Jones is down 0.7%. The S&P is down 1.24%, and the NASDAQ is down 1.55%. So there's a lot of trading left, but the markets are not taking too kindly to this. 10-year bond is up nearly 7 basis points to 2.784%. Now, mortgage rates are only going to follow this. But again, if the numbers come in higher than what everyone expects, I'm concerned that the Fed will panic because they got it wrong, and I just think they're going to panic as a result. They already said recently that they're going to accelerate the tapering of quantitative easing. Now, if they panic and do that faster than what they should, we're looking at higher interest rates than otherwise would be, and a much higher probability that we get a recession sooner than later. All right, let's go back to the calendar. Okay, then tomorrow, April 12th, we have the Consumer Price Index. Month over month, the expectation is a 1.1% increase. And again, that's month over month. Then we have the core CPI month over month, and the expectation is a 0.5% increase. Now, what core CPI is you pull out gasoline and I think food, highly volatile items. Now, the CPI year over year, the median forecast is an 8.4% increase year over year. Remember last month it was 7.9? Well, the expectation is 8.4. And if that number comes in higher than 8.4%, it really could be a problem. And the core CPI year over year, the expectation is 6.6% versus last month's 6.4%. So again, those are coming in on Tuesday, April 12th, beginning at 8:30 a.m. Now, listen, you don't have to sit by your radio or your TV and wait for it. But if you get a chance, just Google CPI. Additionally, at 2 p.m., there's the federal budget deficit. Now, no one's making any predictions on this or estimates. Last month, it was negative $660 billion for the month. And then on Wednesday, April 13th, we've got the Producer Price Index. And the estimate is a 1.1% increase, as opposed to last month, which was a 0.8% increase. And then on Thursday, we've got our initial jobless claims, continuing jobless claims. Important to inflation and the economy are retail sales coming in at 8:30 on the 14th. And the expectation is that sales will increase 0.5% versus a 0.3% increase last month. Additionally, we've got retail sales excluding motor vehicles. The expectation is a 0.8% increase versus a 0.2% increase last month. We've got import price index, and the expectation is a 2.3% increase versus a 1.4% increase. Now, you got to understand these numbers, these estimates are much higher than what came in last month. So my concern is even with these high estimates, if they miss and they're actually higher, that could be problematic for the markets and that could be problematic for the Fed. Now, additionally, the University of Michigan Consumer Sentiment Index will come out at 10 a.m. And the estimate is that it will come in at 59.00. And then on Friday, we've got the Empire State Manufacturing Index. Last month, it was negative 11.8. And this month, the consensus is that it will come in at 1.2 at 9:15 a.m. on Friday. You've got capacity utilization. And the consensus is it will come in at 77.8%. Now, again, the Fed has been wrong. And here's the problem. These guys are wrong. It screws up how we live. Information for you will help you deal with this. The more you know, I think the more it can just be helpful. It'll give you at least some kind of peace of mind. Okay, I just have a couple of recommendations for you. Now, listen, I'm not a financial advisor, and I wouldn't ask you to do something that I'm not doing. But here's my recommendation. The first thing I would do is take a look at your credit card debt and pay your credit card debt down as soon as you can. If you have large balances, just pay a little extra into that so you won't be hit with these high interest rates. Now, the credit card debt is really high interest rates in the first place, but it's just going to go that much higher. The second thing is hold on to your car. Don't buy a new car right now. Don't buy a used car right now. I think last time I checked it is that used car prices are up 40% plus. And new car prices, I think, are up over 10%. So sit and wait. If you can hold out for a year or two with your old clunker, hold on to it. Talk to your local mechanic and see if you can keep it alive. But, just don't buy a car right now. I just don't see any reason to buy one right now, unless you have to. Say you just got a new job and you need a good car to commute. That's a different story. But I find no reason to buy a new car, even appliances too. Wait for your appliances. Say you see a nice stainless steel range. Looks really good at Home Depot, but just hold off on buying that. Additionally, you may want to stock up on food. If you have a freezer, stock up on meat and chicken as much as you can in the freezer. If you have another freezer down in your basement or somewhere in your garage, stock up there. Now, don't pay for it with credit card debt unless you can pay it off really quick, because you're just defeating the purpose, because you're going to get banged eventually with paying the credit card off with higher interest rates. But try to stock up. Try to get if you can get a month or two supply of food that that prices really skyrocket to the point where you can't afford it. You've got something you can fall back on. The same thing with non-perishables. If you have pasta, beans, and other things, just store those away. Try to build up a supply of food that can get you through a super inflationary environment. It'll give you a little peace of mind. But I would just recommend that. What my wife does, she actually air dries food. She has an air dryer, and which is good. But see if you can do that, or even pickle food. Something to try. Now we can weather this storm. I think that my projection is we're looking at 2 years of this. Other item I just wanted to talk about is purchasing a new home. Here's my recommendation. If you're a first-time home buyer, young couple, just sit and wait if you can. Because these high mortgage rates are going to start damping down the price of these homes that hit the market. And the longer you wait, two things are going to happen. Rates are going to go up, and it's going to have an effect on the price of the home, which is going to tamp down the price of a home you may buy. And the other thing that happens if you wait, inventory gets to build up. And right now, inventory of existing housing is low and new housing is low. And that's going to build up. But inventory is coming. So if you can weather the storm for another year and then start looking, do that. I think you'll be better off. And again, these are just my recommendations. I'm not a financial advisor, but just do that. Now, for those who have a home, there could be some benefit if you sold your home and then turned around and purchased a less expensive home. So what you could do is you could sell your home, make an extraordinary profit off of it, and either buy a smaller house, even though it's at an inflated price, or you can sell your home and rent for a year or two and let the real estate market come back to reality. Now you hear all these stories about rents being high. Well, be careful where you rent. What my rule of thumb is if you do rent, find a place that you like and then rent an alternate place that's slightly less expensive. So again, it's up to you. It's just what I would do under this scenario. Before you do anything, just make sure you're aware of any capital gains you may have to pay on your home that you sell. So just, again, make sure, check into the status of your home and whether you can take some capital gains reductions on your home. Now, I've been saying we are headed for a recession for months now. I think the question has always been for me is whether it's going to turn into a stagflation environment or not. And I just want to read you an article from, I think it's Yahoo Finance, and it's about Bank of America coming out and saying, look, we're probably headed for a recession. I like to be right on some things. This I just wish I wasn't right on, but I do think we are headed for a recession. And let me read this article. It's from Yahoo Finance, and it just says, in an investment strategy report sent to clients on Thursday, Bank of America analysts warn that inflation always precedes recessions, and that tighter monetary policies being put in place to control surging prices makes a recession shock very likely. Inflation has been the bane of the U.S. economy for months, and rates have hit new highs since the war began. The annual inflation rate jumped to 7.9% in February. Remember, the new number is coming out this week. It's highest it's been in 4 decades, and the latest forecast suggests March's rate could reach 8.5%. Now, the number I gave you, I think, was 8.4%. They're saying 8.5% at Bank of America. Now, my premise is that if it comes over 8.4%, it really could be a problem for the markets and for the Fed and for you and for me. And what I want to do is I want to switch to a clip, and this is Larry Summer. And Larry Summer is the former Treasury Secretary under Bill Clinton. So let me just play this clip, and we'll come back and discuss.
Inflation. It's at a 4-decade high, and that has Americans sour about the economy overall. In our latest NBC News poll, adults disapprove of President Biden's handling of the economy by a nearly 2-to-1 margin, and it only has continued to grow. One person who saw inflation coming is former Clinton Treasury Secretary Larry Summers, who is now also predicting the U.S. is likely to fall into a recession next year if things don't change quickly. What did you see that so many others missed? You know, we've seen predictions of inflation over the last 40 years. You're the one that seems to have gotten the timing of this hit right. What did you see?
I saw that we had a tidal wave of demand between zero interest rates from the Fed, a huge outpouring of saving that people had pent up from the COVID period, and massive fiscal policy from the December bill and then the stimulus bill that was passed. I think we were too slow to pick up on how rapidly the economy was recovering. Painful fact, though, is that historically, when we've had inflation above 4 and we've had unemployment below 4, essentially always since World War II, that's been followed by a recession within the next 2 years.
Well, thank you, Larry. But just a couple of things I wanted to point out. Now, this is a bright guy. Larry Summers is a bright guy, and he has seen it. He's just a little late into the game. And I think what he's trying to do is he's just trying to make excuses for the Democratic Party and why they dropped the ball. But one thing he did point out is when he was talking about massive fiscal policy, he was talking about the Biden stimulus packages that threw billions and billions and billions of dollars into an economy. And it was an economy that was already coming back. And the problem with the Biden administration is that they were simply too dumb to realize this. And I go back to it's really important to who you have in charge in Washington. So Summers is already telling us, and he packaged it sweetly in order not to offend the Democrats. Biden's fiscal stimulus policies have helped cause this inflation environment that we are in. And the other thing I wanted to talk about is Summers says that people were too slow to pick up that the economy was accelerating so quickly. You know who was saying that since the days of the lockdown? The first lockdown was Donald Trump. If you take a look at Donald Trump has always said that we were going to have a V-shaped recovery. Not a K-shape, not a W-shape, not a Z-shaped, or any other letter of the alphabet. Trump was explicit when he said we were going to have a V-shaped recovery. And if they only listened to Trump and hold back on some of that stimulus, we would not be where we are today. Okay, the markets just closed about 15 minutes ago. Let's just go over the final numbers. Okay, the Dow finished down 1.19%. The S&P finished down 1.69%. And the NASDAQ finished down 2.18%. Let's just take a look at the 10-year bond. 10-year bond finished up a little over 6 basis points to 2.78%. You know, again, this has all been induced by the Biden administration, by misreading the economy, by letting politics take over what sane economic policy should be. So I want to talk about Title 42 and the pushback from some Dems on this. There's bipartisan legislation out there where both Democrats and Republicans want to extend Title 42. So I don't know if you remember, Title 42 was implemented by Donald Trump, and what it essentially said is that anyone that is coming to the United States for asylum does not have to be admitted into the country, and they have to stay outside the country because of the pandemic. So Biden had let that lapse, and what we have now is that we have estimates of 18,000 people per day coming into the United States because Biden had let Title 42 lapse. So I think it was a Democratic congressman from Texas, Cuellar, and he made a good observation. What he said is that, look, we've got money in this year's budget for COVID. If we're investing so much money into COVID in this year's budget, why is the CDC coming out and saying, well, there's no real emergency anymore and you can start letting asylum seekers into the country? It's just inconsistent. So we shall see with this legislation. Okay, I want to pivot to the French election that took place this weekend. And it looks like we're going to have a runoff again between Macron and Le Pen. Macron pulled in 27.6%. Le Pen pulled in 23.4%. That was followed by the socialist candidate, 22%. And there were several candidates with less than 10% of the vote. The interesting thing that this is going to be a rematch from the last election. And listen, it would be very interesting if Le Pen pulls this off. Le Pen is the populist candidate. And we've had a recent election in Hungary with a populist candidate, Viktor Orban. And interesting, Orban won with 71% of the vote. And that's in spite of outside interference from the likes of George Soros and the world media. And to me, if we see Le Pen pull this out, it should be very promising for the Republicans in November. And I'll tell you why. You know, these things don't work in vacuums. People of the world think along the same lines. And I'm talking about the working people of each country. Whether you're French, whether you're American, whether you're Canadian, if you are working people, you kind of have the same outlook on life. You love your country. You want to see the best for your country. And you're a fair person. And if you can remember in 2016, when Trump won, what was very telling is the fact that England voted to leave the EU. And I think what you'll see here is that if you see Le Pen win here, it will be extremely promising for the Republicans in November. Le Pen's a populist candidate. The Republicans today are populist candidates, most of them. And it will be very interesting. And I think Le Pen has a shot. Happened as the third place candidate, a socialist candidate, pulled in 20% of the vote, or 22% of the vote. And that candidate is telling his members to vote for Macron. And everybody is not too sure that all of the socialists are going to vote for Macron. So it's going to come down what these socialists are going to do on election day when they have the runoff. And I think the runoff is on April 24th, if I'm not mistaken. So, you know, we shall see. We shall see. If Le Pen pulls this off, it's very promising for the Republicans in November. Now, quite frankly, I think that the Republicans are going to win. However, if this trend from France results in Le Pen winning, you could see the Republicans getting more seats in both the House and the Senate than most people anticipate. So we shall see. I'll keep my eyes out for that, and I'll let you know when the results come in on the 24th. The next thing I want to pivot to is I want to pivot to this whole idea that people are saying that globalism is dead because of the Russia-Ukrainian war. And I just want to read a quick article. And it says here, BlackRock's CEO. Now, BlackRock's CEO is Larry Fink. And Larry Fink is not a good guy. In the following episode, I am going to have a little, I'm going to set some time aside for Larry Fink. and what BlackRock has done with purchasing single-family homes. But that's another story for another day. Fink came out several weeks ago and said that the Russian war in Ukraine is the end of globalization. For whatever reason. He said Russia's invasion of Ukraine has ended globalization as we know it, says the head of BlackRock. BlackRock CEO Larry Fink told shareholders in a letter on Thursday that Russia's decoupling from the global economy following its assault on Ukraine has caused governments and companies to examine their reliance on other nations. Now, don't believe him. And there's two reasons why you shouldn't believe him. One, the result of the war in Ukraine, it's probably going to result in regional economies. Now you see, one region may be Russia, China, and India. Another region will be the EU. Another region will be the North America and some of South America. But with that said, we will not be free of globalism here in the United States, even under the scenario that Larry Fink is describing. Because you have to understand is that globalization essentially is the nation state takes a back seat to corporations and a few elites that run a country. And I don't want that. I don't care if the world economy is segmented into separate regions. If Americans are still going to fall under that concept of an economy, I don't want that. So globalism is not going to be done away with until all of the nation states take their own self-interest at heart. So Le Pen wants what's best for the French. Donald Trump wants what's best for the United States. Larry Fink does not want that. Larry Fink wants what is best for corporations and a select few elite. And when all the nations get together and say, we're going to make our decisions based on our own national interests, that's when globalism will be gone. Now it's fading. The future does not look good for globalism. But don't believe Larry Fink today. Now, in a related topic, Russia had apparently has pegged, at least temporarily, its ruble to gold, which is quite interesting. So everybody was talking about a gold-backed dollar. Well, you know what? There's a gold-backed currency right now. It's called a ruble. And will that put pressure on the United States to move to a gold-backed currency? Because quite frankly, with this segmenting of the different economies, the regionalization of different economies in the world, will the dollar be able to continue as the reserve currency? Is the U.S. dollar, will that be accepted as a reserve currency if a new regional economy pops up among China, Russia, India? And as we continue to grow our debt and make crazy economic decisions in Washington, is the world going to have confidence in our dollar? So, look, I could see that it could be possible in the near future that we do move to a gold-backed currency here, only out of necessity. And it makes it really interesting for, what the future holds for the United States dollar. But just remember, anything that comes out of BlackRock and Larry Fink is not in your interest. It's not in my interest. It's in BlackRock's interest. Okay, I woke up this morning, I read a headline about Elon Musk not taking a board seat with Twitter. And I was a little disappointed at first, but then I read another article later today, and it said the reason that Musk isn't taking a seat on the board is because he may be interested in a hostile takeover. Now, what happens apparently is if you take a seat on the board on Twitter, and I don't know, this may just be in the bylaws for Twitter, that you can't hold more than, I think, 14.5% of the company in stocks. So this opens up a whole new realm of possibilities for Musk. And wouldn't it be great if there was a hostile takeover led by Elon Musk of Twitter? So with that said, I want to thank you for listening, and you have a good week. And I'm going to leave you with a clip of Donald Trump's rally in Selma, North Carolina on Saturday. Look, you have to understand the competence of Donald Trump. You may not like his tweets. He's sometimes mean, but he's competent. And he has our interests at heart, not his own, not corporations, Americans' interests. So let me leave you with a clip, and I will see you on Saturday. Thanks again.
The stakes this November could not be higher. Biden and the congressional Democrats triggered runaway inflation, the supply chain disaster. How about that? You go to a store, you don't have anything on the shelves. Whoever even heard of it? They declared war on American energy, and now the middle class is being crushed by the highest gas and food prices in the history of our country. Violent criminals are being set loose in Democrat-run cities to prey on innocent citizens. There's never been anything like the crime that we're witnessing in the Democrat-run cities, while radical left judges persecute Republicans and hold political prisoners without trial. Our children are being indoctrinated. Our values are being desecrated. Our heritage is being obliterated. And our country is being humiliated by a president who has no idea what the hell is going on.